In the 1960s, a hot lunch could reach your hands in under 4 minutes, served across a narrow counter where every stool meant something. No reservations. No waiting lists. Just a place where the cook knew your order before you spoke. These counters fed millions every day, yet almost all of them are gone now. When they disappeared, the meals vanished with them. What remains are fragments of memory tied to routines that no longer exist. In the next few minutes, you will see 10 lunches that once defined everyday life and understand why their absence still feels quietly significant today. It always started with a sound. Not a voice, not a bell, but the sharp, steady sizzle of butter meeting a hot flat top. You heard it before you even reached the stool. And somehow, you already knew what was coming. Grilled cheese on white bread was never written to impress anyone. It did not need to be. 2 slices of soft white bread. A layer of American cheese that did one thing perfectly: melt. Butter pressed into the surface until it turned golden, then deeper, until both sides carried that exact color you could recognize from across the room. In 1963, it cost about 25 cents. Paired with a bowl of tomato soup, it became a full lunch for less than half a dollar. For factory workers, students, and anyone counting coins in their pocket, this was not just food. It was certainty. You could walk in, sit down, and know exactly what you would get every single time. There was no presentation, no garnish. The plate arrived plain, sometimes with a paper napkin tucked underneath. But the moment you lifted it, the bread held its shape while the cheese stretched just enough to remind you it was still hot. Most people did not talk much while eating it. They did not need to. The sound of the grill, the quiet movement of plates, and the rhythm of the counter filled the space instead. Today, you can still order a grilled cheese. But it does not arrive the same way. It does not sound the same. And it does not carry the same certainty it once did. Back then, it was never just a sandwich. It was something you could depend on. It sat there all day, just behind the counter, never announced, never rushed. A simple pot, placed low on the heat since early morning, quietly becoming something more with every passing hour. Tomato soup at a lunch counter was not opened from a can when you ordered it. It had already been waiting. Since 10 in the morning, sometimes earlier, it simmered slowly, stirred now and then by a cook who did not need a recipe in front of her. She had made it too many times to forget. By noon, it was ready in a way that could not be rushed. The flavor had deepened. The edges softened. A small splash of whole milk near the end gave it a smoother finish, just enough to take away the sharpness without losing its warmth. In 1961, it cost about 15 cents. For many, that was enough. It arrived in a plain bowl, sometimes with a few crackers on top, sometimes without. No one complained either way. You held it differently than other meals. Both hands around the bowl, especially in winter, when the door opened and cold air moved through the room with every customer. The heat from the soup settled into your fingers first, then slowly into the rest of you. People did not order it to be impressed. They ordered it because it worked. Because it fixed something small inside the middle of a long day. Now it is still sold, still poured, still served. But it rarely waits all morning anymore. It does not have the same time behind it. And without that time, something quiet but important never quite arrives. There was a moment in every lunch counter when the grill went quiet for just a second, and then the sound changed. That was when the hot turkey sandwich started. It was never fancy. It was never meant to be. It was built from what was already there. Turkey carved earlier in the morning, often from a bird that had gone into the oven before sunrise. Nothing wasted. Nothing rushed. 2 slices of white bread went down first. Then the turkey, placed thick and uneven, the kind of cut that did not care about presentation. And then came the gravy. Not poured carefully, but ladled generously, until everything beneath it disappeared. In 1964, this meal cost around 65 cents. For a factory worker on a short lunch break, it was the closest thing to a full dinner he would get before the end of the day. It arrived steaming, heavy, and slightly uneven. A second slice of bread often came on the side, just to help carry what the fork could not hold. Mashed potatoes sometimes sat underneath, absorbing the gravy and making the plate feel even heavier than it looked. You did not eat this quickly because it was small. You ate it quickly because you had to. 20 minutes, maybe less. A clock always existed somewhere, even if you did not look at it. And yet, in those minutes, something changed. The noise of the room faded slightly. The stool felt more steady. The day felt a little less sharp at the edges. It was not just turkey. It was not just gravy. It was a pause in the middle of everything else that would not wait. You could smell it before it reached your stool. That was the first warning. A warm, slightly sharp scent rising from the grill, moving through the small space between orders, plates, and voices. The tuna melt was already on its way. It began simply. A scoop of tuna salad, mixed early in the day, always heavy with mayonnaise, softened with celery, and pressed together until it held its shape. Nothing was rushed about it. It was prepared before hunger arrived. Then it was placed on bread. Often an English muffin or white bread, split carefully and set flat on the grill. The cook did not look down for long. He did not need to. His hands remembered the timing better than any clock. A slice of cheddar went on top. Then heat. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to bring everything together until the cheese bubbled slightly at the edges and the smell became impossible to ignore. In 1966, it cost around 55 cents. It was not expensive, but it was not ordinary either. It was dependable. It arrived fast, often within minutes, but never felt careless. There was a rhythm to it. One order going out, another already being prepared, a stool being cleared as the next person stepped in. No one waited long, yet no one felt rushed. You did not need instructions for how to eat it. You just picked it up, noticed the heat, and understood that patience had already been built into it before it arrived. Today, the tuna melt still exists. But the counter does not pause for it anymore. The smell does not travel as far. And the rhythm it once carried is harder to find. Something simple like that does not disappear loudly. It just becomes less common, one order at a time. There was a specific sound when a patty melt was pressed on the grill. A slow, deliberate weight coming down on bread, followed by a faint hiss that meant everything inside was beginning to change. It was not just a hamburger. It was not just a sandwich. It lived somewhere in between. Rye bread went down first, already buttered, already waiting. A thin beef patty followed, cooked on the flat top where everything else also passed through. Then Swiss cheese, soft enough to disappear into heat, and onions that had been cooking long before the order ever arrived. The onions were never accidental. They started early in the morning, sliced and left to soften slowly in butter until they turned deep and sweet. A good cook knew exactly when they were ready. A bad one rushed them, and everyone noticed. In 1965, this meal cost about 55 cents. It was not the cheapest thing on the menu, but it was the one regulars remembered most clearly. When it was pressed together, the edges of the bread darkened slightly. Not burned, just firm enough to hold everything in place. The inside became soft, almost fused, as if the ingredients had agreed to stay together for a while. It arrived without decoration. No garnish. No special plate. Just food that knew exactly what it was supposed to be. People did not eat it quickly out of habit. They ate it slowly without realizing it. Each bite carried a balance of crisp and soft, hot and mild, simple and complete. And in the middle of a noisy lunch counter, it created a small silence around the person eating it. Today, you can still find versions of it. But the onions are often pre-made, the timing less patient, the edges less deliberate. And something about that slow press on the grill does not quite happen the same way anymore. It did not arrive like a sandwich. It arrived like a plate that meant business. First came the bread, placed flat on warm porcelain, already soaked slightly from what was coming next. Then the roast beef, sliced thin but layered generously, each piece carrying the memory of a long morning in the oven. And then the gravy. Not a drizzle. Not a touch. A full, steady pour that covered everything without hesitation. The kind of gravy made from drippings that had been collected, reduced, and waited on since early in the day. Beside it, or sometimes underneath it, sat mashed potatoes. Soft, heavy, and deliberately plain. They were not there for decoration. They were there because they belonged there. In 1964, this meal cost about 65 cents. For many, it felt like more than lunch. It felt like a complete moment in the middle of a working day. There was no need to rush it, even though time was always limited. You cut through it with a fork, but it did not behave like a typical sandwich. It fell apart slightly, absorbed heat, and became something closer to comfort than structure. Every bite was warm, thick, and steady. Nothing sharp. Nothing sudden. People often ate it without looking up much. The room around them stayed active, but the plate demanded a slower rhythm. And for those 20 minutes, it did something simple but important. It made a weekday feel briefly like Sunday. Today, versions of it still exist, but they are often lighter, cleaner, more controlled. The weight has been reduced. The silence around it is gone. But back then, it was never trying to be elegant. It was just trying to be enough. It never tried to stand out. That was the first thing you noticed about it. No steam, no sizzling grill, no sound that called attention. The egg salad sandwich simply appeared when it was ready, as if it had been waiting quietly in the background of the entire kitchen. It began with eggs boiled earlier in the day. Not rushed, not forgotten, just timed correctly. They were peeled, chopped by hand, never blended into paste, because texture still mattered in a place like this. Mayonnaise was added in a way that did not overwhelm. Just enough to hold everything together. A touch of mustard, a pinch of salt, a hint of black pepper. Nothing more than what was necessary. Then it was spread onto white bread. Soft slices, cut neatly, sometimes corner to corner, sometimes straight down the middle. A simple dill pickle spear often came beside it, along with a few potato chips placed without ceremony. In 1962, it cost about 35 cents. It was not a meal that demanded attention. It was a meal that gave it back. People ordered it when they did not want noise in their food. When the day felt too full, too fast, too heavy. It arrived quickly, but it never felt rushed. There was something quiet about the way it was eaten. No hurry. No conversation needed. Just a stool, a plate, and a small pause in the middle of everything else. It did not change the room. It did not try to. And maybe that is why it stayed in memory longer than most things that were louder, hotter, or more expensive. Today, it still exists in many places. But it rarely carries the same silence with it. Because silence, like timing, is something that used to be built into food and now is often missing before the first bite. It arrived still breathing heat. Not in a literal sense, but in the way the steam lifted from the crust as it was placed on the counter, as if the meal was not fully finished deciding what it wanted to be. The chicken pot pie came in its own ceramic dish. Individual. Heavy. Familiar to every cook who worked a lunch counter long enough to understand timing without looking at a clock. Inside was everything that mattered. Diced chicken, soft from slow cooking. Carrots and peas that held their shape but had lost their hardness. Potatoes that absorbed flavor instead of resisting it. All of it sitting in a cream sauce that thickened as it rested. And on top, a crust that defined everything beneath it. Golden, uneven, slightly puffed in places where steam had pushed its way through. It was not decorative. It was functional. And it carried the first warning for anyone who did not wait long enough. In 1967, it cost about 55 cents. It was not fast food, even though it arrived at a lunch counter. It had been waiting longer than the customer had. The first bite always carried risk. Too soon, and the heat stayed hidden beneath the surface, waiting to remind you. Many learned that lesson once. Few forgot it. Still, they ordered it again. Because what it offered was not just food. It was something steady. Something built slowly in the back of a kitchen that never stopped moving. There was no need for explanation when it arrived. No question about what it was meant to be. You simply let it cool for a moment, then continued. And in that quiet pause before the first bite, it felt like time itself had slowed just enough to be noticed. It never looked impressive when it started. A pot on the stove in the back corner of the kitchen. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just a slow, steady simmer that began long before the lunch rush ever arrived. Beef stew was not rushed because it could not be rushed. The meat was browned in batches early in the morning, each piece given time to form a crust before meeting the broth. Then came carrots, potatoes, onions, and water that slowly transformed into something thicker, darker, and more patient. By noon, it was no longer separate ingredients. It was one thing unified by time. At the counter, the cook split a biscuit fresh from the oven. Still warm. Still soft inside. It was placed in a bowl, not as decoration, but as foundation. Then the stew was ladled over it. Heavy. Steaming. Steady. In 1966, it cost about 65 cents. For many workers, it was not a choice based on taste alone. It was a choice based on reliability. It would fill you. It would last. The biscuit underneath did something important. It absorbed everything slowly, changing texture without falling apart immediately. Every bite became slightly different as you worked your way down. There was no rush to finish it. Even if your break was short, the food refused to behave like it was in a hurry. And that is what made it memorable. Not speed. Not presentation. But consistency in a world that rarely offered it. A cook who started the stew late never needed to say anything. The empty seats at the counter said it for her. Today, it still exists in some places. But the patience behind it is harder to find. Because what made it special was never just the recipe. It was the time that lived inside it before it ever reached the plate. Every lunch counter had one. It did not need an introduction. It did not need a description. People already knew what it meant the moment they saw it on the board or heard it spoken by the cook without looking up. The Blue Plate Special was not a single meal. It was a system, a rhythm, a daily promise that changed depending on the day of the week, but never changed in purpose. Monday might be meatloaf. Tuesday could be pot roast. Wednesday often brought fried chicken. Thursday leaned toward pork. Friday was almost always fish. Whatever it was, it arrived on a divided plate. 3 sections pressed into ceramic, keeping each part in its place. Nothing mixed unless you chose to mix it. In 1960, it cost around 65 cents. That price did not shift much. It was designed to feed everyone, not impress anyone. The cook never paused to explain it. She did not need to. She already knew what day it was. She already knew what would be ordered before the customer spoke. And the customer knew too. They sat down, often in the same stool, at the same time, ordering without looking at a menu. Coffee came first. Then the plate. Then silence for a few minutes that felt steady in a way the rest of the day did not. What made it powerful was not the food itself, but the certainty around it. In a world that kept changing, this one thing stayed predictable. You did not choose the Blue Plate Special. You simply arrived on the day it belonged to you. And for a short time, that was enough to feel like everything was in the right place. These meals were never just about food. They were about a time when a stool, a counter, and a few quiet minutes could hold an entire day together. Each plate carried routine, trust, and a kind of certainty that no longer exists in the same form. When the diners closed, something more than menus disappeared. A way of life faded with them. Today, these meals survive only in memory and scattered recreations, never quite the same as before. If this journey brought back something familiar for you, stay connected, because there are more forgotten stories waiting just beneath the surface.